Let's Get This Podcast Started is a production of Get a Grip Studios. Go to getagripstudios.com. Hi there, my name is Michael Colligan. I'm one of the owners of Get a Grip Studios, and I am a professional podcast creator and producer. And one of the things that I see, during startup that a lot of people have a hard time with is that they want everything to be perfect before they publish any content. They want to know exactly what they're going to do for the next 150 episodes. It's going to look exactly like this. It's going to have this intro. It's going to have that. And it's going to have this. And they spend a lot of time. And I call this kind of like a vertigo. They go into vertigo because they're listening to content over and over again that they've already recorded. They haven't published it yet. They think maybe they should manipulate it or something. And I would always encourage people just to get your content, start putting content out there and commit to improving the structure, the format, the music, whatever you want to do, improving those things moving forward. Because sometimes we can get really tied down to editing and production and trying to make it look as amazing as possible. And that's all great. But don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Because your podcast, if it's actually successful, is going to morph and change and evolve, and new things are going to happen. In fact, it's better to think of yourself more as a conduit for this, and that this podcast is going to be its own thing. And you're not in control of it. And you're really more channeling it from the universe. And if it works, you'll see that a lot of podcasters talk that way about their podcast. I know I've heard Joe Rogan say it on several occasions, that he just feels like he's the channel. Another good word to think about is host. What is a host? A host is the embodiment of something. Something external. That's what a host is. In the Catholic faith, it's a piece of bread is the host. But on a podcast, the host is really not the show. The host is really channeling the show, or really allowing the show to flow and become what it's going to be. So that's a process. And it takes time. And you can't know everything in advance. You don't know what it's going to be. It's creating itself through you. If it's going to be a good podcast, people are going to actually listen to it and want to listen to it. So I would say that, put some work into how you want your podcast to look and sound and production and all that, but don't get stuck there. Get past that phase as quickly as possible, because as soon as you get to episode 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, everything's going to be totally different. Totally different, especially if you're starting a long-form conversational podcast. And if you're doing a set of presentations, fine, but that's not really a podcast. Or a set of interviews, scripted interviews, that's not really a podcast. What I'm talking about here is if you're going to sit down and discuss ideas in the long-form conversational format that has emerged as a very powerful force in the world now. And if you want to add to that body of work, the whole thing is going to create itself based on the mixture of you and your guests and the type of people you attract and some themes that come out of the show as you move forward. So don't get tied down in the beginning with making sure everything's perfect. Make sure it's good. But don't worry about it being perfect, because you're going to change it for sure anyway. If you need help starting a podcast, or if you want to talk to someone like me about your podcast idea, or Scott, or one of the people that works here at Get a Grip Studios, you can go to getagripstudios.com. You can register, and you can book a session with people that have produced a lot of podcasts, successful monetized podcasts. Thanks for listening. Bye for now. Let's Get This Podcast Started is a production of Get a Grip Studios. Do you want to start a podcast? Do you need help with your existing podcast? Do you want to record some conversations or a presentation? Do you want to be a guest on Let's Get This Podcast Started? Go to getagripstudios.com.